Hello. So I've just watched two 1 hour lectures on Kant and Immanuel Kant, and yeah, I feel like I've gained understanding of what he was really talking about in his ideas, and I don't know if I'm actually going to be able to intellectualize this because, well, I just yeah, I'm not 100% sure that I've fully grasped the concepts he was talking about, but yeah, I'm just going to explore some of the ideas that sort of clicked a little bit with me. Um, yeah, so. One thing I understood about Kant before was that, similar to natural law, that there's sort of a set of moral principles which, I guess, they're objective and they're written into the universe almost. But I haven't actually watched any of his lectures on ethics yet. But I'm basically uh, deriving it based on his um, explanations of metaphysics and epistemology. And basically, what he thought about this was um, that we have almost like a mold in our brain or a blueprint which is designed to sort of pick up reality and sort of understand reality, and we have to fill the mold in a way. So it's like it's already there within our brain. This um almost ideal of reality. But yeah, and then it's just waiting to be filled with experience. I think. With sensual experience. Yeah, but the actual blueprint itself of how we perceive reality isn't sensual. It's not something that we're just experiencing by looking at the world. It's almost a lot deeper than that. Um, yeah, I don't know. Okay. So he described this as like it's almost universal. It's something we all have inside of us. This same blueprint, and I guess it's almost a logical one that where if we use logic, we're able to work it out. And yeah, so this coincides with his ideas about the categorical imperative and his views on ethics. But yeah, and also what I how I perceived this before was it was objective because everyone had it, but then again, I guess it's just how you define objectivity and subjectivity because, well, I guess in this case it's subjective because it's in the mind, but it's objective in a way that it's universal and everyone has it. But um, I think Kant described it as subjective because it's not something that comes from outside of ourselves. It's not something that exists outside it. It's within our minds already. And I don't know exactly when it comes about. Like, is it something we're born with? Is it something that is inherited by our parents? Like I can see a lot of issues with it, but I feel like it might just be me misunderstanding it. Like the fact that everyone has an internal blueprint of the world, perhaps already there, perhaps not. I don't know. Does it come about via socialization, or is it just something that um we I guess grow up into? Because not I guess not everything that not all changes after birth are just purely down to socialization. A lot of the changes are still biological and perhaps genetic, and the things which just come about. And one example of this is the fact that we grow. It's not that we're socialized uh, for our body to grow. It's the fact that it's just a biological thing, and why should this be any different with our minds? So perhaps this blueprint of reality slowly evolves as we're growing up in the world. We grow up in the world, and we notice things around us. We interact with the world, and then this causes our mind to perhaps form um an idea about what reality is, or an idea of how to interact pragmatically within the world, with different objects and things like that. It's something we have to develop. It's like it seems that a baby is born in the world with some sort of, I don't necessarily want to call it knowledge, but I will, with a knowledge of um perception, almost like a space and distance. But I'm hesitant to call it a knowledge because it's not something the baby can intellectualize with language. But that's not necessarily all knowledge is it? It's not language is just something we use to describe what we see going on in the world. But we already have the ability to be able to perceive what's going on in the world before we're able to develop language. So I'm happy with using that word knowledge. It's just not knowledge in the sense that we're able to explain it. It's just something we know, and yeah. So that's something we're born with. We're born with that a bit. Just as human beings, we're born with that ability to be able to determine space in reality, and sometimes that can malfunction in different disorders. Yeah. So. So I think, following from Descartes, some of the things that Kant was trying to figure out was, is there an objective world? Well, I don't actually know if he was trying to figure that out, but I feel like he just assumed it. He took for granted the fact that there is things which exist objectively or outside of ourselves and not in the mind, and it's us who interact with them. But I think he also understood that the world around us isn't necessarily objectively as we see it, because we can't help but place our own judgments on things almost, or our own perception. It's like we're constantly looking at things through a lens. Okay, yeah, so it's that we look at reality through a lens. We perceive the objective world through our own mind and through our own sensual experience, and that's something that we can't escape from. We can't necessarily see things as they are, as it's like phenomenal and nominal. We can't, or is it noumenal? I think it's noumenal. We can't experience the noumenal world because we're constrained to our own perspective. We're constrained to our own mind, and we have. I guess the phenomenal is like it involves sensual experience. It's like something that we can't escape from. So when we look at something in the external world, it's a phenomena because we're almost imposing our own blueprint of reality onto it. We're imposing our own ideals and our own mind and our own perspective, and it's just something that we can't not do. It's we just and did we if we didn't do that, then it wouldn't be an experience at all, because it's impossible for us not to do that. You can't look at things objectively, in the sense that you can't look at things without imposing your own perspective on things. Someone's coming again. Okay, well, you can look at the language of objectivity and subjectivity, and you can see that there is a disconnect there, because objectivity can mean, I guess, multiple things. One of the things it could mean is outside of ourselves, outside of sensual experience, outside of our mind, something which exists in and of itself. So we might say this pen is objective, but it's really not objective. But this pen has an objective form outside of myself. I think I've just interlinked two of the definitions there. But this pen's objective because it exists outside of myself. However, objectivity can also be described as as almost a widespread view, or something that we all have. So there's objectivity of things existing in and of themselves, without necessarily the influence of people. But then there's objectivity. Okay, I've got it. There's objectivity where we can be objective about something. So, it's like we're not necessarily imposing an emotion on something or an ideal. It's just that we're trying to step back and maybe look at something objectively. So we're not necessarily getting involved in it. We're just looking at it from almost a bystander perspective or something like that. And subjectivity is also the same sort of idea. Subjective as in something which goes on inside the mind, which is almost everything but not, because that can be twisted quite easily, I guess. So I guess all experience is subjective because experience implies subjectivity. You can't have objective experience because that's going into the realm of nominal experience, which isn't even an experience. So I guess to say nominal experience is a paradox, or maybe not a paradox because that's not the right word to use, but nominal experience is impossible. Yeah. And then there's the subjectivity where perhaps we feel emotion towards something, or we impose our own ideals onto something, and we get passionate about things. And yeah, that's another definition of subjectivity, which I believe perhaps Kierkegaard held, but I'm not sure about that, so don't quote me. But yeah, so there is, I guess, a language barrier, or maybe not a language barrier, but a language issue in. Yeah, people keep coming downstairs, so I keep pausing it. Yeah, so basically, based on objectivity and subjectivity, Kant described everything as subjective in a sense that everything is sensual. We can't help but put impose our own perspective onto the world, because the world is partially our perspective. We can't experience the objective world. The world is a subjective place, but this has been taken out of context in many ways, especially if you look recently at the postmodern movement, where people are pretty much rejecting any objective meaning, or they're perhaps misinterpreting Kant's basis, saying that Kant's idea, which said everything is subjective, and now they're saying that now there's you can literally create your own reality to any extent, because reality is subjective. But that's not what Kant was getting at. Kant was trying to say that the objective world doesn't necessarily exist. It's we can't help but impose our ideology on it, or see things through the human perspective, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we can live our lives however we want without boundary, or we can define reality in any way. I was dying at wit. Yeah. So he probably wouldn't like the way that his ideas have influenced today's world, because now you've got people who are literally, I don't know if it's a bad or a good thing, but you can see like the diversity in society today, and how, I guess, non-traditional it's became. It's like we have an opposition to anything which is traditional, especially on the left of the political spectrum. And yeah, so that was probably influenced by Cartesian thought, but that's not what he meant, and he'd probably be extremely, I don't know, sad about seeing what his ideas have actually turned the world into, because he was a traditional guy and he liked traditional values, and yeah, so he wouldn't be happy about it. Anyway, I've just talked about Kant for a little bit. I don't know if I've got it right, but I've tried. I've tried to understand him a little bit more than I perhaps did before, and I've still got lots more of these lectures to get through. I've got ethics. Oh shit, it's gonna cut out. I've got an ethics lecture, metaphysics. That one will probably be specific. I think that's the one I'm actually watching. Oh no, I'm understanding and ethics left to go through, and metaphysics. Yeah, so that should be fun. Right, thanks for watching.